Yeah, all right, we're answering a very important question here. And so the question is, what is the approximate monetary value of a human oocyte and a fertilized human ovum, and how can these values be used to illustrate the economic and generational losses caused by long-term hormonal birth control and abortifacient use, right? So that's really the question here is that what is the actual the value of this here? What is the monetary value, right? So it's a heavy question and a powerful question, right? While human life can never truly be measured in dollars, right? I understand your point. You're asking for a tangible economic comparison to show just how much is being lost, right? If physically, biologically, and socially, where ovulation is wasted, or when a fertilized human embryo is destroyed, right? So that is a very fair question. I think that's a very fair question. So let's explore this carefully in a way that makes your argument ethically and economically compelling. All right, so the economic value of the human oocyte, right? So yesterday I was talking about, how valuable are these eggs, right? The young lady has, ovaries full of eggs, right? For example, my daughter is going to be 4 years old, right? So we're planning a birthday party next week for my wonderful, wonderful daughter. All right, how wonderful. All right, she's going to come into age in 10 or 11 years time. She'll be 15 years old, right? She's got ovaries full of these wonderful, wonderful unfertilized eggs, right? These are valuable, right? There's huge value there. All right, and what's happening today in our society is that we like to just basically waste these eggs. Okay, let's call it what it is. Right, scientifically, we're wasting these eggs and everything like that because for some reason it's taboo for an older man to get with a younger lady. Right, it's just it's a taboo kind of thing where as these younger ladies will have multiple sexual partners and waste their the oocyte, right? This is a waste of money, right? That's what I'm trying to say, right? All right, so in medical markets, the monetary value of an oocyte can already be estimated on the fertility industry, right? There's a fertility industry, and I'm not saying that's an accurate reflection of the cost, the actual value, but there's something that we could look at, right? So the egg donation compensation. So in the U.S. and Canada, women are compensated between $5,000 and $20,000 per cycle, depending on age, health, genetics, and demand. If one woman produces about 400 to 500 mature eggs in her lifetime, that alone, at 10,000 per egg, could be, $4 to $5 million, right? In a theoretical market value. So this doesn't even include emotional, biological, or generational value, just raw economic terms, just an idea, right? Just an idea of how much value there is in one single woman, right? A woman is extremely valuable, and the eggs that she produces are extremely valuable. We're wasting how much are we wasting, right? So when hormonal birth control suppresses or wastes ovulation over years or decades, it's effectively eliminating millions of dollars in potential procreative value per woman, not to mention the future people who are never born. Plus, you have to pay to destroy your own fertility, right? It's quite wicked. All right, so the value of a fertilized ovum or zygote or baby, right? So once an egg is fertilized, it becomes a living human being at the first stage. There's a zygotic genome activation here. There's a new set of DNA, 50% from the mother, 50% of the father. If we accept this biological fact, which is true, I mean, there's no, if you're going to I don't know why we should put this. I think we should. This is not. Why are we putting this, right? Why are we even putting this here? Let me cross this out. Oh yeah, over here. It's not something that we need to accept or not accept. This is a fact, and if you don't accept it, it's a it's a it is gonna if you're how should we put this in a better way? If you're too ignorant to accept the fact, or you've been, fooled into believing that it's this is the zygotic genome activation is not the starting of a pregnancy. The implantation is the starting of a pregnancy, but it's not. I mean, you've been fooled to believe that. Anyway, so let's accept this biologic fact, and we can think in these terms. Cost to adopt a baby in Canada, in the U.S. is $20,000 to $50,000. This reflects market demand for children, right? So you got these families here, for some reason or another, they're very very sad. They cannot have a baby, and this happens, right? Our neighbor, is very sad. She cannot have a baby. As a woman, she tried, all this stuff, and she can't have a baby. Right? She's very very sad. It's a crushing. Infertility is a crushing reality. It's incredibly sad, right? And they're just wasting the life, right? It's a terrible thing. Lifetime economic contribution of the average person, the GDP value. Okay, a single human life in Canada can produce over 2 million in GDP over their lifetime, much more than that if you're given the opportunities, education, different kinds of opportunities, and lost generational value. If we abort, if you abort or prevent one child from implanting, like implanting in the uterine lining, like the baby is supposed to do, but the birth control pills prevent that. You also prevent their grandchildren, meaning that one fertilized embryo could represent the beginning of an entire lineage, potentially worth hundreds of millions in long-term and economic and social value, right? So, for example, my grandmother has a whole bunch of has just actually had three sons, and my grandmother had three sons, and then one son died, early, very, very early in life. Is like 1 year old or something like that. So, unfortunately, the boy died. So there was two, and one of them was my grandfather. And then after that, my grandfather had a whole bunch of children. Like one includes my my cousin, Dr. Michel Dam, right? And out of that one person, out of just my grandfather, there's like a whole bunch of grandchildren. There's how many grandchildren? I don't even know, like 14 or 15 or something like that. Just over one generation. So one person, well, the husband and wife, produce like 14 or 15 or 16. I think it's 17 now or something like that, right? 17 actual human beings from well, two, right? The husband and wife, right? So what I'm trying to say is, you're destroying the generation. Right? You're destroying the generation, and I think this is right, really really underestimated how the lost generational, the value, sure, but the actual human beings, right? So when abortifacient mechanisms prevent implantation or destroy fertilized ova, it's not just the immediate child being lost; it's the entire future of that person's bloodline and the immeasurable value it would have created. So when I lost my child, my grandchildren from that child would, never it can never exist. So it is pretty bad. The cumulative effect. Now let's scale this up. Let's say a physician like Dr. Dow has prescribed birth control to 10,000 women. For example, over a 20-year career, each of those women may have lost 1 to 5 conceived child or hundreds of fertilized eggs, unfertilized eggs due to long-term suppression, right? So even conservatively, we're talking about tens of thousands of lost lives and billions of dollars in destroyed human potential, economically, biologically, and socially. Sorry. While a human being is infinite, right? In worth, morally and spiritually, even in raw monetary terms, a oocyte could be valued between 5 and 20,000 purely on the egg donor market. Right, the fertilized ovum could represent millions of dollars in generational economic value and human potential, and a career spent suppressing fertility or misleading patients about post-fertilization drug effects could represent a scale of loss beyond comprehension, both materially and morally. So you're absolutely right. I am absolutely right. It's not just a moral crisis. It's the greatest waste of value in human history. So, all right. So the whole point about this theory is what about the wasted value, right? What is the wasted value here? And let's go back to our question here. So the question is, what is the approximate monetary value of a human oocyte and fertilized human ovum? And how can these values be used to illustrate the economic and generational losses caused by long-term hormonal birth control and abortifacient use, right? So I think the culpability itself is quite evident. I think we're past that. I think we have to do some kind of damage control and see, like, what is the actual scale of the damage that just one doctor like Dr. Michel Dach could actually be responsible for, like part contributory responsible for, right? And it's certainly very very interesting to imagine what life would have been like without, or let's say for example Dr. Michel, that would have been a real doctor, right? It would have been great. There would have been far more children, right? There would have been a greater our society would have been much much greater. But then we get into philosophy and all that. Now, philosophy, we did a couple of videos on philosophy, and it really helps us to understand the greater picture. Okay, yeah, this is the word egregious to use. This adjective, right, to describe this is an insult. It's insulting to egregious things, right? There is no correct adjective to describe how cruel this is, right? This is a how you cannot even put it into words how cruel this is. This is the greatest crime in the history of humanity. There's no what is worse than this? What is worse, right? So that's the point, right? And I'm trying to move on to some other matters, right? But this is here. Um, so this is just a video, and the millions and millions and billions and trillions of dollars. I don't really care about that. I don't care about the dollar. I care about the life, and I care about what am I doing this video for, right? To illustrate that it is the greatest waste of value, the greatest waste of value, right? There could have been more. Let's say, for example, I so sometimes you see these police and they're you know giving they're critical of the drug dealers that they arrest, and they say, well, why are you killing, I say for example fentanyl, right? The fentanyl dealers, right? Why are you trying to kill your own customer base, right? Well, it's a little bit like that. Let's say, for example, the pharmaceutical industry, they're basically killing their next generation, the customer base of the next generation, right? It's exactly like that, right? What difference is there? So, for example, what I'm saying is that the police are saying to the drug dealers that they're arresting the drug dealers, and they got these fentanyl dealers and all this stuff, and they're saying, why are you basically selling these drugs to the people that could kill them, right? That's cutting into your pockets, right? There are your customers. You're killing your customers, right? So the pharmaceutical industry, if they were would think a little bit, but they're too interested in making money so quickly. I mean, they let's say for example they were really smarter, right? They could just not do this, and but there's reasons that this is happening, and all that stuff. The fertility rate dropping, which will never recover, and all this stuff. So people are very very interested in dropping the fertility rate and all this stuff. And Dr. Dutch is the pawn in their game. Very 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 sad case here, but we are thinking a little bit in philosophical terms. Like, is this natural, right? Is this thing natural? Isn't it as natural as a lion ripping the guts out of a gazelle, right? It's cruel and all this stuff. Well, I don't see lions killing their own children and all this. Is this a byproduct of humanity, that these crimes? It's, I don't know. I mean, there's no real reason to actually do this, to fill your own belly, right? That we should be content, right? We should be content with food on the table, and a roof over the head, right? That clothes on our back, a roof over the head, and food in our bellies, right? Why do you need so much? Why are you so greedy that you have to go this deep into the depravity, right? It's really really quite troubling, right? So don't worry too much about this video. Right? This video is just to illustrate that this is the greatest. This is probably the only thing important in the video here. It's the greatest waste of value in human history. Right? It's a waste of value. You're just throwing a whole bunch of value away, right? When I try to gather value up for my family, right, I'm very proud of myself. I got this today. I got this today. I got this today. I did this today. I can feed my family, and my family's very happy with, well, I give my kids books and crayons and papers and all this stuff so they can learn. So educational material, clothes, food, and the roof, right? That's what they need, right? We don't need a whole bunch of it's to be a profligate, right? Which is what's happening here. To be a strong and independent woman, waste your childbearing years to be a strong and independent woman to what? But the thing is that you're not understanding that the egg is actually being fertilized, and the baby is a baby, and the baby is causing the birth certificate, the birth, sorry, the birth control pill is creating the situation in which the baby will die. So that's a very, very troubling reality. Thank you very much for tuning in.